All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, you guys are all doing well. Today, for our quick little notes here, we're talking. I believe today is going to be the 23rd. What I wanted to do is talk about how do we graph the shifted hyperbolas, given either just the straight formula, or if we're given information, whereas like vertices, foci, things like that. So first things first, let's look at the two different formulas. Now we're just adding in our h's and our k's, just like we had with everything else. So you have your x minus h quantity squared, y minus k quantity squared equals 1. And then once again, the only thing that changes is when you have the y squareds come first. I will remind you that one of the biggest mistakes that students will make is whenever you have the y value first, when you write out your h and k, remember h comes first for your ordered pair. So h and k are going to be your center, and everything else holds true, where the your A value is your center to vertex, your B value is the center to, remember what we called that co-vertex, but CUDA calls it that conjunctive axis, I believe. And the C value is going to be your center to your foci. And remember, to get C squared, it's A squared plus B squared. Okay? So let's take a look at an example, and let's walk through a straightforward how to graph one. And we'll just jump right to this. Excuse me. So once again, first thing we want to do is identify all of our parts. So it's x minus 3 minus y quantity squared over 25. So when we look at our formulas for the hyperbolas, since the x squared comes first, I can see that my image tells me that this has to go left and right. So I just put this here and I make a little note. This has to go left and right. And since it's minus 3, that means my center is located at 3 and 2. My a squared value is 25. Therefore, a is plus or minus 5. B squared value is 9. So your b value is going to be plus or minus 3. And your c squared value is going to be 25 plus 9, otherwise known as 34. Now, remember, you can always use your calculator to go back to see if you can get, oops, got the wrong button here. We can always go back to our y equals table, and we wanted to see if 34 has any perfect squares to it. So we divide it by x squared, go to your table, and you'll see right off the bat that it does not simplify. So you just leave it as your c value will be plus or minus the square root of 34. Okay, so a little sketch. We have our center at 3, 2. And now we just have to walk all of our parts. We know that our a value is the distance from the center to the vertex, and it has to go left and right. So we have to go left and right 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those vertices, start making a list, are going to be at 8 and 2, and negative 2 and 2. Okay. Our b values, we go up and down 3. 1, 2, 3. So that's at negative 1, and 1, 2, 3, and that'll be at 5. So that was at 3, negative 1, and 3, 5. Create our little rectangular box around it. We know that our asymptotes go through here. I think I might skip write the equation of the asymptotes of the shift, because it gets a little tricky, and it's not to say that you guys can't do it. It's just kind of tough to go through all that with e-learning, so I might hold off on that. So c values. Now remember, the c value is the distance from your center to your focus, and they're going to be over to the left and to the right. So I start thinking about it. The square root of 34 is really close to the square root of 36, which means it's got to be a little bit less than 6 units away from each. So if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we just put a little dot here-ish. Same thing over here. Doesn't have to be perfect, but when we write out where our focus is located, our x value is what we moved. We moved left and right. So what we do is we start with our 3, and we added the square root of 34 to it. The y value stayed the same at 2. And then we took 3 and we subtracted the square root of 34. And we just write it like that. And now we know hug your asymptote through the vertex, hug your asymptote, hug the asymptote through the vertex, and go. All right? And this will work the exact same way whether or not if you have an x squared first hyperbola or a y squared hyperbola as well. You just have to make sure that when you write it out, just take your time with that. Sometimes you will get square roots that are simplifiable as you go through. Sometimes you don't. Okay? So let's try another version. Another version of this is when you are given information. For example, in this case, we are given that we have a vertex and we have a foci. So first thing we want to do is plot it. That way we understand, we can identify which direction this is going. I got to move that sheet. It's bleeding through on the other side here pretty good. That way we can see which direction it's going so we know which form of the equation we're going to use. So plot it. Vertex at 5 and 0 and 5, -4. So if my vertices are vertical of one another, that tells me right away it has to look like this. Okay. Also notice the foci is above and below the vertices. So it's telling me it has to do this and this. Okay? So we have a bit of information. We know that the halfway point between these two has to be where the center is located. So we know the center will be at 5, comma something. So we look at what was 0 plus -4, and then take half of it. So it'll be at -2. Now we can go through our values. The distance from the center to the vertex is a, so your a value is 2, therefore a squared is 4. The distance from the center to your focus is the c value, and that one was 4, so that means c squared is 16. So now remember, it's a hyperbola, so c squared will always equal a squared plus b squared. So 16 is 4 plus what? Well, that has to be 12. So now we know it's a y squared hyperbola, so it's y minus k, quantity squared over a squared, minus x minus h, quantity squared over b squared, is 1. So your center is your h and your k. Now once again, I made mention of this earlier, be careful. Whenever it's a y squared, anything that comes first, you make sure you double check what your k value is, because I know that the most common mistake is that people will put their h first. So this means you get y, since it's a minus a -2, we write it as plus 2, quantity squared. Our a squared value was 4. Our h value is 5, so it's x minus 5. And our b value, our b squared value we figured out to be was 12. And you're done. Oops, I squared there. And you're done. So I've got a couple on the Go formative again for you guys to give it a shot and go from there. And I'm thinking that on Monday I'll push out to you guys a little mini assessment on the conic stuff that we've done so far. And I don't think it's going to be any more than 4 or 5 questions. It'll probably still be the same idea of show your work with the multiple choice. That way you can get an instantaneous grade. And obviously if you get something wrong, you can go back right away to make it correct and show your work with it. And that way you can all earn full credit. So remember, try everything, give it a shot. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. But the work that I've been seeing, you guys have been doing pretty well with this stuff. So I appreciate it. Stay well and try and enjoy your weekend then. Thanks, guys.